Test 1. You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to Section 1. Section 1. You will hear a telephone conversation between an official at a village hall and a woman who wants to hire a public room. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6. You will see that there is an example that has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Hello?
Oh, hello. I wanted to inquire about hiring a room in the village hall for the evening of September the 1st.
Let me just see. Yes, we have both rooms available that evening. There's our main hall, that's got seating for 200 people, or there's the Charlton room.
The main hall seats 200, so 200 has been written in the space. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 6.
Hello?
Oh, hello. I wanted to inquire about hiring a room in the village hall for the evening of September the 1st.
Let me just see. Yes, we have both rooms available that evening. There's our main hall, that's got seating for 200 people, or there's the Charlton room.
Sorry?
The Charlton room, CHARLTON. That's got seating for up to 100.
Well, we're organising a dinner to raise money for a charity, and we're hoping for at least 150 people. So I think we'll go for the main hall. How much would that cost?
Let's see. You wanted it for the evening of September the 1st?
Yes, that's a Saturday.
So from 6 p.m. to midnight, that'd be £115. That's the weekend price. It's £75 on weekdays.
That's all right.
And I have to tell you, there's also a deposit of £250, which is returnable, of course, as long as there's no damage. But we do insist that this is paid in cash. We don't take cards for that. You can pay the actual rent of the room however you like, though. Cash, credit card, cheque.
Oh, well, I suppose that's okay. So, does the charge include use of tables and chairs and so on?
Oh, yes.
And what about parking?
Yeah, that's all included. The only thing that isn't included is, you said you were organising a dinner?
Yeah.
Well, you'll have to pay extra for the kitchen if you want to use that. It's £25. It's got very good facilities, good quality cookers and fridges and so on.
OK. Well, I suppose that's all right. We can cover the cost in our entry charges.
Right, so I'll make a note of that. Now, there are just one or two things you need to think about before the event. For example, you'll have to see about getting a licence if you're planning to have any music during the meal.
Oh, really?
It's quite straightforward. I'll give you the details later on. And about a week or 10 days before your event, you'll need to contact the caretaker, that's Mr. Evans, to make the arrangements for entry. He'll sort that out with you.
And do I give him the payment as well?
No, you do that directly with me.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
Right. Now, is there anything I need to know about what happens during the event?
Well, as you'll be aware, of course, the building is no smoking throughout.
Of course.
Now, are you having a band?
Yes.
Well, they'll have a lot of equipment, so rather than using the front door, they should park their van round the back and use the stage door there. You can open that from inside, but don't forget to lock it at the end.
OK.
And talking of bands, I'm sure I don't need to tell you this, but you must make sure that no one fiddles about with the black box by the fire door. That's a system that cuts in when the volume reaches a certain level. It's a legal requirement.
Sure. Anyway, we want people to be able to talk to one another, so we don't want anything too loud. Oh, that reminds me. We'll be having speeches. Are there any microphones available?
Yep, just let the caretaker know. He'll get those for you. Right, now, when the event is over, we do ask that the premises are left in good condition. So there's a locked cupboard, and you'll be informed of the code you need to open that. It's got all the cleaning equipment, brushes and detergent and so on.
Right. So what do we need to do after everyone's gone? Sweep the floors, I suppose?
Well, actually, they have to be washed, not just swept. Then you'll be provided with black plastic bags, so all the rubbish must be collected up and left outside the door.
Of course. We'll make sure everything's left tidy. Oh, and I forgot to ask. I presume we can have decorations in the room?
Yes, but you must take them down afterwards.
Sure.
And the chairs and tables should be stacked up neatly at the back of the room.
I'll make sure I've got a few people to help me.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 2.
Recording 2. Section 2. Voluntary Guiding. You will hear a woman talking to voluntary guides at an art gallery. Before you listen, you have 30 seconds to read questions 11 to 14.
Good morning, I'm Wendy McEwen. Please call me Wendy. I train volunteers at the gallery, and it's my great pleasure to meet you today. To begin, I'd like to quote from a speech made in 1882 by our first director, Eliezer Montefiore. He said the Australian public should be afforded every facility to avail themselves of the educational and civilising influence engendered by an exhibition of works bought at the public expense. We now live in a world where the notion of civilisation is seldom discussed, so let me mention some of its synonyms: enlightenment, refinement, and conformity with the standards of a highly developed society. In my view, this is what the creation and enjoyment of art can do for the public: conform, refine, and enlighten. The idea of civilisation may be unfashionable, but an interest in different civilisations has certainly grown. Australian art is well represented in our collection. We have some wonderful paintings by Grace Cossington-Smith and Arthur Boyd, but there are Asian and European works to rival those abroad. In fact, the single most expensive purchase this gallery has ever made was a $16.2 million landscape painted in 1888 by Paul Cézanne. Visitors will ask you for this figure, just as they'll be curious about Cézanne's career as a banker in France and his time with his lover in Tahiti. Sometimes it seems the public is more interested in trivia than in art, so it's your job to inform about the techniques of production, the themes an artwork deals with, as well as the culture from which it came. Elevate cultural discourse rather than stoop to the level of the popular press. Bear in mind those words of Eliezer Montefiore.
Before you listen to the rest of the talk, you have 30 seconds to read questions 15 to 20.
While guides are diverse, guiding is systematic. By this, I mean we adhere to standardised delivery, whether tours be for viewers on Saturday morning, for school groups, or for VIPs. Standardised delivery means that guides give the public virtually the same information about the same artworks. Sure, we all have our personal styles, but the content needs to be the same. To that end, guides are tested on information before taking their first tour. Guides also have to keep an eye on the clock. Guided tours last 1 hour. Since the building is large, part of that time is taken up in walking as well as mentioning the location of toilets, fire exits and drinking fountains. After recent additions, the gallery is twice the size it was in 2013. So ask your group where they'd like to go first. Then calculate how many artworks you can see on each level. Aim for a total of 14 in your hour. In each room, there's lots to see, but you'll only be talking about 1 or 2 items. By all means, when people in your group want to know about a work not on your list, go to it, but be brief. For the iconic works by Australian painters, you'll need to take longer. Some of these iconic works are part of the school curriculum, and many are known to international visitors who come just to see them. In the past, guides stood beside an artwork and gave a short speech. To a certain extent, that's still what happens with an audio tour. However, we now try to involve the public. One technique is called elicitation, when a guide asks questions about an artwork to see what knowledge already exists among the visitors. That way, you don't appear as the ultimate authority, and often visitors know considerably more than you. On that note, there will be times when you need to intervene, to let others in the group speak, to alter misconceptions, or simply to move on. As I said earlier, before you're let loose on the public, each voluntary guide is evaluated. Oh, that reminds me. I recall from your applications that 2 of you are Japanese speakers, so we'll probably ask you to take around groups of Japanese. Now, let's go into the gallery itself.
You now have 30 seconds to check your answers. That is the end of Section 2.
Section 3. You will hear a conversation between two students planning a research project. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 23 As you listen to the first part of the conversation, answer questions 21 to 23.
We'd better start planning our research project because we don't have much time left before it's due.
I know, only 3 more weeks.
Is that all? I thought we had more time than that. Well, let's get to work then.
Okay, so we agreed we're going to interview shoppers about their spending habits. Did we decide to conduct our interviews at the department store?
We haven't decided anything definitely yet, but I think the shopping mall would be a better place. We'd get more of a variety of shoppers there.
Yes, that's a good point. So let's do that. How many interviews did the professor say we had to complete?
She said at least 30. That sounds like a lot, doesn't it?
Yes, but if we divide it up between the two of us, that's just 15 each. That's not so bad.
Now listen and answer questions 24 to 30.
Okay, so I guess we'd better start designing our questionnaire.
Well, we have to do some reading first, don't we? Didn't we say we were going to compare our results to the results of a government study?
Right, the government study about how the economic crisis has changed people's spending habits. We want to see if we get similar results.
Yes, so we'd better read that first and then design our questionnaire. Then I guess we'll be ready to go out and interview shoppers.
No, don't you remember? The professor said she had to approve our questionnaire first before we actually conducted the interviews.
Oh, right. So we'll get her approval and then conduct the interviews. I think it's Saturday would be the best day for the interviews because everyone's out shopping then.
Right. We'll do it on a Saturday then.
And let's also plan to get together the next day to analyse the results. It's best to do that while everything's fresh in our minds, don't you think?
Sure, that sounds like a good idea. Okay, so then we're going to have to present our results to the class. Do you have any ideas for that? It's an important part of our grade, so I think we should plan it well.
Well, I think the obvious thing is to prepare some charts showing our results and how they compare with the government study. That will help make the information a lot clearer to the class.
Right. Okay, so we'll draw up some charts of the results.
And then that's it. All that will be left to do is give the class presentation. Do you think we can be ready on time?
I sure hope so. Let's get started now.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Part 4. You will hear part of a presentation about an agricultural program in the country of Mozambique. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
I'm going to report on a case study of a program which has been set up to help rural populations in Mozambique, a largely agricultural country in Southeast Africa. The program worked with 3 communities in Chikwalakwala district near the Limpopo River. This is a dry and arid region with unpredictable rainfall. Because of this, people in the area were unable to support themselves through agriculture, and instead they used the forest as a means of providing themselves with an income, mainly by selling charcoal. However, this was not a sustainable way of living in the long term, as they were rapidly using up this resource. To support agriculture in this dry region, the program focused primarily on making use of existing water resources from the Limpopo River by setting up systems of irrigation, which would provide a dependable water supply for crops and animals. The program worked closely with the district government in order to find the best way of implementing this. The region already had one farmers' association, and it was decided to set up 2 more of these. These associations planned and carried out activities including water management, livestock breeding and agriculture, and it was notable that in general women formed the majority of the workforce. It was decided that in order to keep the crops safe from animals, both wild and domestic, special areas should be fenced off where the crops could be grown. The community was responsible for creating these fences, but the program provided the necessary wire for making them. Once the area had been fenced off, it could be cultivated. The land was dug so that vegetables and cereals appropriate to the climate could be grown, and the program provided the necessary seeds for this. The program also provided pumps so that water could be brought from the river in pipes to the fields. However, the labour was all provided by local people, and they also provided and put up the posts that supported the fences around the fields. Once the program had been set up, its development was monitored carefully. The farmers were able to grow enough produce not just for their own needs, but also to sell. However, getting the produce to places where it could be marketed was sometimes a problem, as the farmers did not have access to transport, and this resulted in large amounts of produce, especially vegetables, being spoiled. This problem was discussed with the farmers' associations, and it was decided that in order to prevent food from being spoiled, the farmers needed to learn techniques for its preservation. There was also an additional initiative that had not been originally planned, but which became a central feature of the program. This was when farmers started to dig holes for tanks in the fenced-off areas and to fill these with water and use them for breeding fish, an important source of protein. After a time, another suggestion was made by local people which hadn't been part of the program's original proposal, but which was also adopted later on. They decided to try setting up colonies of bees, which would provide honey both for their own consumption and to sell. So, what lessons can be learned from this program? First of all, it tells us that in dry, arid regions, if there is access to a reliable source of water, there is great potential for the development of agriculture. In Chiqualaquala, there was a marked improvement in agricultural production, which improved food security and benefited local people by providing them with both food and income. However, it's important to set realistic timelines for each phase of the program, especially for its design, as mistakes made at this stage may be hard to correct later on. The program demonstrates that sustainable development is possible in areas where there is.
That is the end of Part 4. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to Part 4. That is the end of the listening test. In the IELTS test, you would now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet.